Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Alec Jones-Hall. I'm one of the directors and co-founders of Great British Expos and SME Today, proudly sponsored by Paul Waite from Aspen Waite. We run some of the UK's biggest trade shows. We've welcomed over 55,000 SMEs to our events, and we regularly communicate with 186,000 subscribers through our digital platform, SME Today, in which we are proudly associated with Aspen Waite and a great contributor, which is Paul Waite. Welcome, Paul. Introduce yourself. Tell everybody who you are and why you're talking business with me today.
Joyeux anniversaire. That's all I've got to say. And don't you all think that Alec looks like a Bond villain? Anyway, I'm Paul Waite. I'm a chartered accountant by qualification. I have an honours degree in economics, and I worked for two of the biggest three firms of chartered accountants from the age of 21 to 27, became a corporate all-rounder in my sort of mid to late 20s, and formed my own business 28 years and 5 months ago, Aspen Waite, starting as a startup. So one of my credentials for being a wise man in terms of having a thing like this is I obviously started off with no turnover, borrowed money, had to establish a brand, marketing presence, build up a client base from scratch, all those sort of things. And that's most of my skills, particularly marketing ones, have been honed by trial and error, really, seeing what works and what doesn't work, and so on and so forth. As well as being a chartered accountant, I had a very varied sporting career, successful sporting career from the age of 4. And I've been involved in innovation since 1990. I became de facto chief executive of a biodegradable polymer company with a worldwide new patent. And I architected and signed a worldwide agreement with British Technology Group when I was 32, I think it was. And one of the good things about having my own business is I've been able to have a career within a career. So I worked for First Group PLC, eventually got promoted to managing consultant of their bus expansion into Central and Eastern Europe. And I went, when my best client at the time died in his farewell rally, he was a world rally champion. I went from being sort of his facilitator to running his group. I think on his death, the turnover was about 37 million. And by the time I finished, it was 110. So I won a number of awards, some of which you can see in one of our offices.
Yeah.
And yes, I think one of the things, sometimes I think one of the things that people ask business people is, are you sort of multi-purpose, or are people just skilled at one particular sector? So I think I'd like to think that I could pretty much be involved in any sector, particularly one I think that involves people.
Yeah.
Then in terms of, so Aspen Waite started off life as a chartered accountancy practice, but one, a bit more humor and personality than the most, which obviously isn't very difficult. And then about 8 years ago, I think my perception really, we talk about what is an entrepreneur. So my perception was that we needed to get away from just being a firm of chartered accountants. So we rebranded as a professional services company. And that's just been growing and growing. And I think actually what's really quite exciting, just in a very short period of time in this new year, we've made enormous progress, I think, in terms of properly understanding who we are and how to capitalize on what is, without being arrogant, a wonderful message and a compelling set of products. But perhaps one of the things we're not so good at is sort of spreading the word to the world so the world knows that we exist. So now, as well as a whole range of professional services that you would expect, we have a brilliant marketing team, including design capability. We have a radio station, which is obviously, I think, a world first, actually. And again, I think we're going into the new year with a lot of optimism and confidence, having gained a lot of real world experience and started to attract some really good people and sort of head in the right direction. The other business probably worth talking about before we go into the questions is Aspen Waite Foods is a really good lesson in perseverance. So we got involved in food about maybe 2.25 years ago, obviously before the pandemic. And one of the contracts we actually had was all the food for Southampton Football Club, for instance. And of course, when the pandemic came along, that was about as much use as a whatever in space, as a bad saying goes.
Yes, yeah.
So we were quite heavily loss making over the pandemic, and but through perseverance, as I say, and keeping at it, and and actually, I think also sort of understanding that you could go about selling food the Aspen Waite way. That service is service, regardless of what it is. So we've actually picked up a number. I'd say probably 3/4 of all the competitors in the food space have gone bust over the last year and a half, which obviously is a bit sad, but obviously it creates an opportunity. And at this moment in time, we actually have genuinely £10 million of orders if we could finance them. Company's gone from turning over probably 20 grand a month last year to current turnover of nearly 100 grand a month.
My goodness me.
And we have massive new contracts starting for Hampshire County Council in 2 months' time. And last week we launched Aspen Waite Wholesale, which we expect to turn over about £3 million in 18 months.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mean, Paul, you've got so much accomplishments. We could talk all day. I mean, you're an author, you're a speaker, you've now a presenter. But, at heart, you really are an entrepreneur. And hearing about Aspen Waite Food and seeing where, the successes that you've had with that, really, it was the fortitude, really, to carry on during the pandemic. And now, as you say, you've got £10 million worth of contracts. Just talk to us a little bit about what COVID's taught you as an entrepreneur, Paul. What lessons have you learned during the last 18 months?
I'm going to write a book about that, I think, because I actually feel like I'm unrecognizable from the person who went into the pandemic. I think being in my position in Aspen Waite prior to the pandemic was, I wouldn't say easy, but was relatively straightforward.
Okay.
We had a compelling product. People couldn't get enough of R&D tax credits in particular. We were enjoying hockey stick growth, and I said several times we can be whatever size we want to be. I said that numerous times. Of course, what the pandemic's done is it's brought all of us into a world that no one could possibly have expected, and no one could have had any experience of. And I've spent the whole time since March 20, I suppose, adjusting. Start off with probably in denial.
Okay.
This isn't really a problem. If we've got poor turnover, it's the staff's fault, not the conditions. I'm being truthful now. Everyone's inefficient. And then sort of coming to terms with, and of course, one of the things that was very challenging is we went into the pandemic as a rapidly growing company, and therefore our budgets were set consistent with that. And of course, we ended up with falling sales but costs the same, which obviously caused a massive problem. So we've had to some extent, sort of look at what we need and what we don't need, and but to be fair, I'd say this hasn't always been universally popular in Aspen Waite, but we have not given up on any of our dreams, I would say. We stayed with our strategy, and I think with a bit of luck from the maker above, I think we go into the new year with a very strong armory of obviously, one of the things when you're diversifying that way you have, and you have a range of new products, and you have like a radio station, and no professional services company has ever had one before. Obviously, it requires a lot of investment, and people that people that don't properly understand marketing quite often expect to see a return, ridiculously quickly. And of course, it's interesting. One of the things, I've been involved in some fantastic meetings already in the 9 days back. One of the things that's been quite heartening, actually, is some of the people that we've spoken to have really been through our website and all our media, have taken the trouble to watch my videos and interviews.
Yeah.
And so, I now feel much more confident that people, they're very good, and that, people are looking at them and they're impressed. So I've actually sent more great emails to Oksana, who is our head of international business, in 8 days than I did in the whole of last year. And this has come about because people have watched my interview with her. They've looked at some of the stuff I've done with China, for instance. And so, I think one of the things I'd say to people, on this call is, courage is very important, and stick to your guns. And if you've got a good thing, it will come right in the end if you keep at it.
I mean, Paul, obviously I've been on this journey with you, or during the lockdown, and you're one of the only CEOs that I know that's actually increased their marketing spend during COVID. And to give us the rationale behind that, and why so often in a pandemic or when times are tough, do businesses reduce their marketing spend when actually it should be quite the opposite? They should be doing more.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite put it like how you did. I'd say, so how I explained it just now is, we went into 2020 off the back of consistently, so probably an average of maybe 30% compound growth for 4 years up to that period. We had food was already in its early stages. The radio was just about to come into being. So we had all these sort of baby products, and so I guess what would be more true is we didn't increase the monetary spend.
Okay.
The percentage spend, the cost as a percentage of turnover obviously increased, and that was probably the brave bit, because it would have been, and as I did get quite a lot of stick. Yeah. At one particular period, for spending too much money, and obviously I am greatly looking forward to the day when Aspen Waite Food is massively successful, so I can blow a few raspberries around. But so I think it's more a case of, as I say, having a clear strategy. I feel very strongly that the accountancy world has changed forever. People have changed forever. The pandemic has changed how we work, how people perceive things, what they want, and I guess I've been brave enough to say, even though it's tough, we need to see that strategy through, and God willing, we'll see the rewards of that down the road. And we've got to a situation now where I think every cost center of ours that was a net cost last year, I expect to be a net revenue generator this year.
Okay, great. Paul, you talked about how COVID has changed business. It has changed business. And obviously it's changed the way that you do business. How has it changed you as a person? How has it changed you as a CEO? How has it changed you as a CEO who's actually got a firm that's in the top 100 accounting firms in the UK?
Yeah, so that's quite deep. I think, as I say, I think I would say I'm very different to how I was 2 years ago. One of the things that I've had to do, which was sort of part of the not giving up on my vision, is I've gone from being someone that wanted to be like an executive chairman to unfortunately for me, in terms of timing, basically being responsible for an enormous number of functions. I'd say I was effectively the chief financial officer, the chief business development officer, the chief accountancy officer. So one of the things I said in the meeting the other day is I've looked under every stone in Aspen Waite, and not liked what I saw in most of them, to be honest.
Okay.
I think one of the things as a person, I don't know what, it's not really a lot for me to say. I would say that I was a very nice person who can be formidable, depending on the situations, but in a very fair sort of way, and I don't like injustice and unfairness in particular. And probably, as Claire rightly reminded me the other day, basically said you could be a grumpy sod. She didn't say it quite as bad as that, but and I concede that as being true. So I think one of the biggest thing, and it's quite a hard thing, and I'm going to think about this. It's a bit like my concept of serendipitous synchronicity, which I developed as a concept, and then it took me probably a year before I actually was able to write about it. It's probably the chapter I'm most proud of any chapter I've ever written, actually finding the intelligence to actually write what serendipitous synchronicity was all about. So one of the things, it's quite a hard thing to explain how I got to this point, but I effectively got to a point where I realized, so in my experience, nearly everyone that I've worked with has been affected by the pandemic. Has been mentally challenged, shall we say. Two of my biggest cheeses in particular. And so you tend to find people were getting a bit more dispirited than they should have done, and maybe suffering from depression and not coping with criticism very well, that sort of thing. And so I sort of realized that so probably what I used to do is, while I sent out a lot of I'd say I was an unusually open chief executive. I tell people, if I'm thinking about doing something, people tend to know about it, which is obviously very good if you're working for me. As well as the praise, it probably would be true to say that in certain situations I might put in a nasty paragraph. Not like you lazy bastards, turnovers down sort of thing. And I actually realised that it was tantamount to someone shouting at somebody.
Okay.
Someone shouts at you, you don't listen to what they're saying, you just think you're shouting at me.
Yes, yeah.
So I've actually changed completely the style of how I deal with people, which is quite difficult because obviously I have every reason to be cross with people, and the fact is, that sales have been below budget and a lot of people have let me down. One of the things that I've been very pleased about is one person in particular phoned me on January the 2nd, having been in denial all of last year, I'd say, and actually said, I needed to phone you up to tell you how much I let you down last year.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't say where you did, but I was just really chuffed that this person had taken the 10 days of Christmas to come to that conclusion, So yes. I think probably even more realistic, I think I can be very hard on myself. I think I've got to a point now where I think, well, you can't do anything better than your best, can you?
No. I mean, Paul, you talked about all these many roles, like being the chief exec and being the chief and business development officer, being the chief finance officer. Do you think that comes from the fact that in your very essence, you are an entrepreneur, that you're able to wear all these different hats? I mean, you've took Aspen Waite from new startup right up to a top 100 firm. So you've been through the whole process. So do you think it is because intrinsically you are an entrepreneur and you're able to fulfill all these different roles within business?
I don't know. I mean, I think let's be honest, I've had to do it because at the end of the day, it's my money that's going to be lost. I've got probably, 6 personal guarantees out, so I'm probably on the line myself for several £100,000, I would think. And obviously, so while everyone, other people might lose their jobs, I'm not denigrating that. Obviously, with me, I would lose Aspen Waite and still be left with people knocking on my door,
yes.
Which isn't a very nice situation to be in. So the way I look at it is, I would rather work my weekend, for instance, than I would lose my business. So I obviously have supreme motivation to do things. And without being, I think comfortably the best accountants in Aspen Waite. And so, for instance, I've used my intelligence to plan our tax strategy. So we managed to not pay any tax at all last year.
Okay.
We've actually gone from having probably 40 or 50,000 pounds to pay self-assessment tax a year ago to about £2,000 this time.
Okay.
So, I think it's more to do with motivation. I don't think being an entrepreneur makes you multi-skilled. I think quite often entrepreneurs don't really have any skill at all, you could argue,
Well, Paul, we're getting questions come in. Anybody who's on the call, they can ask a question. You can put it in the chat and I will unmute you. You can ask Paul direct. Or as people are doing, if you want to send me a direct message, I'll ask Paul the question for you. So, Paul, we've had our first question come in. It says, can you ask Paul, what does he think makes an entrepreneur? What do you think makes an entrepreneur, Paul?
Well, someone who has views or gets ideas often for not through a conscious thought process, which may be unconventional, or you just get these ideas which I don't put it. You think outside the box. Like again, I was having in the grumpy sod conversation with Claire Wiltshire the other day. We were talking about the ability to see the bigger picture, think outside the box. Those sort of things. So I think what an entrepreneur does is an entrepreneur sees things that other people don't see.
Yeah.
Doesn't always mean to say that you get it right, of course, because sometimes you see the wrong thing. But so I think an entrepreneur, and as I said, we've discussed this before, that I think 99% of business people aren't entrepreneurs.
Okay.
A business person is someone that can run a business, hopefully to make a profit. But of course, as we also have discussed, most businesses don't even survive 3 years. So,
but Paul, I mean that is quite a bold statement. If you were to ask most business people, they would label themselves as entrepreneurs. But Paul,
do you think they would?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people I know would call themselves entrepreneurs, and they're perhaps not entrepreneurs. So, Paul, tell us the difference between a business owner and an entrepreneur.
Well, as I say, I'm a business owner. So, let's say you had a florist shop. I mean, to run a successful florist shop, you need to be able to buy good stock. You need to, be able to make it look nice, have a nice brand, have friendly people to greet the customers and sell it. Get your pricing right. Probably in this day and age, have a strong online presence.
Yeah.
Right? None of that requires entrepreneurial flair, does it? There's nothing entrepreneurial about that. As a very successful person running a florist business would simply have very good business acumen. That is not the same thing as being an entrepreneur.
So would the florist entrepreneur think, actually, I'm going to franchise my florist shop, and I'm going to what give us the mindset what a florist entrepreneur would do? What would make them entrepreneurial?
I don't know. So maybe forming partnerships with local hotels and other businesses where you could work to mutual benefit or something. Maybe thinking about the sort of products that people that are buying flowers might want to buy, and maybe getting into those as well. Yeah. Maybe growing flowers as well as selling them. That sort of thing.
And Paul, tell us how the mind of an entrepreneur works. How would you describe a mind of an entrepreneur? How does the mind of an entrepreneur work?
That's a funny question, isn't it? I mean, as I say, if you take the thing about, I think, so my brain doesn't stop, including during the nighttime, unfortunately. So my subconscious is always on the go, and I'm obviously picking up. So we had a meeting yesterday, for instance. We had a wonderful meeting yesterday with a lady called Sophie Hassan, and within seconds of her talking, my brain was reacting to what she was saying, and coming up with, so instinctively to me, within seconds of listening to her, I came up with ideas. And so by the end, I said, basically, I really want to play with you.
Yeah.
You've got massive skills in areas we don't really have. I think you can. So I think it's basically, I think it's really sort of having a fertile brain, loving business and being open-minded. And, and again, one of the things I was talking yesterday, as well as maybe having the idea, not everyone would have the guts to actually say to a person you've just had a meeting with, hey, how about us doing this?
Yeah.
People can be a bit over shy, can't they? But one of my favorite sayings is you don't ask, you don't get, so I think being cheeky is quite a good thing personally. So
Morris
what's the worst that can happen?
Morris has put entrepreneur's main characteristic is to be willing and to be able to take risks. The word comes from go-between, so effectively it's a dealer.
Yeah, not really, is it? It's anyway. I think I am. It would be quite interesting, actually. One thing we might want to try this somehow. It would be, see, you say that most business people think they're entrepreneurs. Well, I wouldn't really like to do this because obviously, part of my role is to build people's confidence up, but that's just hogwash. I probably haven't met 10 proper entrepreneurs in my whole lifetime, let alone most people thinking they're entrepreneurs. So there's a part of me who would love to have a seminar rubbishing people thinking they were,
Okay, we've had a message, another person asking a question. Tim, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. You can ask Paul yourself if you want to.
Okay, hi.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, Tim.
Hi, Paul. So my question is pretty straightforward. I'm myself a one-man band. I'm not sure I'd call myself an entrepreneur after this discussion. I don't know.
But Tim
you're allowed.
Tim, can I ask you a question though before you ask Paul? Would you have called yourself an entrepreneur before that discussion?
No, I don't think so, to be honest. No, I'm trying to run a small business here. Okay. So just I'm just running a one-man band business. My question was, what's your top tip? Thinking back to your startup times, something just to keep us all going.
Well, I think there's a number of things, and the thing I suppose the other thing is, although we've been going for 28 years and 5 months, obviously some of our new ventures are in themselves startups. We've got a number of things. We've got an environmental consultancy business which is in its infancy. It's starting from scratch. Probably in terms of the time I've got to tell you today, Tim, I would say probably the thing that I did straight away, actually, like day one, which I'm really proud of myself, because I wasn't, I didn't think I wasn't, so this must have been something inside. I actually sat down with a designer and developed an Aspen Waite brand in the first couple of days, which I'm really pleased we did. I also spent an awful lot of time, as well as developing the purple color and the branding, coming up with the name Aspen Waite, which in itself I think was an incredibly important decision to make. And again, I'm very proud of myself that young Paul in those stressful times was able to come up with that. So I think my top tips would be branding, commitment, planning, and giving your business 103 million%.
All right. No, that's very interesting. Yeah.
Have you got any follow-up question that you want to ask Tim?
No, I don't think so. I'll let others. I'm sure they're queuing up.
Paul is an author as well. He wrote 3 books. What book would you recommend for Tim to read, Paul? Out of your book?
The first book is obviously is all about all the mistakes I made. So probably, I don't know. Probably if you were in a early phase business, maybe the first one. I mean, obviously, as I say, I think the first one is maybe still the best, but I think it's one of the things that I personally think when I write now, I'm a much better writer today than I was 3 years ago. My writing skills improve all the time, which is what you would expect from someone who wants to be the best they are. So, I mean, they're all very different, but I think probably if I was, in an early stage, I'd probably ask them get someone to read the first book, I think.
So, Tina, if you can put your details in the chat, and if you want a copy, Raising the Bar, as Rachel just put it up, you want a copy, Tim, if you reach out to Tina, I'm sure she'll send you a free copy of Paul's book. And if you're lucky, you might even get a signed copy of Paul's book. So, yeah, thank you for that question, Tim. Another question that we've had come in, Paul, and I know the answer because we've chatted previously. When did you first know that you were an entrepreneur?
Well, no, this is. I was thinking about this when you were going on about most people thought they were. I have, for the vast majority of Aspen Waite's life, hated being called an entrepreneur. Actually, recoiled against it.
Yeah.
If you'd said to me 10 years ago, Paul, you're an entrepreneur, I would have said something vulgar to you, I expect.
Yeah.
I think since I have got more involved in, so I've had a sort of interesting life. I've sort of one way or another been involved in coaching from a very early age, and then when I was at Ernst & Young, I was actually put on the National Lecturers Workshop program to become a proper lecturer and tutor and all that. And then probably for quite a few years, I didn't really use those skills very much. And obviously I do now, because obviously I'm doing 2 radio shows a week and doing this. Doing lots of interviews and that sort of thing. So I think when especially now, I mean, as you know, I find these shows very, very interesting because I have to explain to you things that I would normally never have to do. So I think now it would be obviously foolish for me not to say I was an entrepreneur. I would actually may even say I was the very essence of an entrepreneur now.
But looking back at your life, Paul, and I know your life story, you know, you've said you were always considered to be adventurous, you were always inquisitive, you always had this great desire for knowledge and for education. You know, do you think, you know, all the way as a child, I mean, you talk about your first entrepreneurial experience. Do you want to tell us about that, your first entrepreneurial experience, that you're looking back now, you realize it was your first entrepreneurial experience?
Yeah, so my parents lived, well, they're still in the same house today, which is very interesting. So lived in the same house since 1963. And we used to have 2 plum trees and 1 pear tree. The pear tree I owe a huge debt to because it was effectively the rugby posts.
Okay.
So the pear tree was about 25 meters down the garden in front of the grass. So I used to kick 50 conversions into the tree every morning. Every day from the age of about 8, for instance, and the plum trees were quite large, and they would have had, I don't know, hundreds of pounds of plums on them. And I don't really, you know, I can't remember why I decided to do this. So for some reason, I did all the picking. My brother wasn't very interested, so I used to climb up the tree, you know, in quite a cavalier fashion, as to be said. Picked loads of plums, and then one day I took a load of bags down into Bridgewater and saw the fruit and veg guy called Ken Vigor, and basically haggled with him over him buying my plums, and he very kindly offered to buy loads of them. And then, you know, I went on and sold hundreds of pounds of plums to Ken Vigor over the next 2 or 3 years or whatever it was.
Did you reinvest the money, Paul, that you got from the plums?
I would almost certainly have spent it on books.
Yeah. But you've had this great, you know, desire and pursuit of education, haven't you, Paul? You know, even now, I mean, you know, you're a great reader, and you know, whenever you get a new project, you will always be one of the most read people I'd say that I know. And you know, do you think that is also part of being an entrepreneur, that you constantly have this drive to better yourself, to educate yourself?
No, sorry. I'm sorry if that's a politically, you didn't want me to say that, but obviously, you know, I don't think intelligence, for instance, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are not conventionally intelligent at all.
Okay.
And I think to be an entrepreneur, I don't think that's got anything to do with intelligence personally. I think the reason why I have an insatiable thirst for knowledge is to do with my desire to be the best at anything. You know, I want to be the best. You know, I'd like to think I was the cleverest person in the world. I'm not saying I am, but you know, if I could be, I'd like to be. You know, I'd like to be the best chief executive. So I think it's more to do with the pursuit of excellence and being an entrepreneur. You know, that sort of thing.
Another question we've had come in, Paul, is did you set out to be in business or did you just stumble into it?
Depends what the person means by that, really. It's a bit of a. I had an IQ of something like 175 when I was 8. I think I was officially the cleverest person in Bridgewater. That's true. Not that it takes a lot, by the way. No, being rude to my own town. We've got. I'll tell you a funny story about that one day. And so I actually was in the top class in my primary school, which was a very good primary school, for 3 consecutive years. I was actually the top class when I was 8, and my parents, I think, very sensibly, didn't send me to grammar school underage. You know what I mean? So I actually sat in the top class, and what was the question?
Did you plan to start? Did you plan?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, and then sorry, I lost my train of thought then. And then when I was 10, because my teachers obviously were very proud of me, etc. 2 of them in particular, Mr. Barnforth and Mr. Davies, who was the headmaster, spent an awful lot of time sort of outside of school hours, sitting down with me. And I think at one point we spent quite a lot of time focusing on being an architect. And then I think my prodigious ability to crunch numbers won, and that then drifted into being an accountant. So I think I wasn't even 11 years old by the time that effectively my mentors at school encouraged me to become a chartered accountant.
Wow.
And being a very OCD focused person, as many of you will know, once I've decided to do something, that's like, there's no budging me.
Yeah.
So little Paul, went off to grammar school and started working as sort of assistant to a major financial director in a quoted company from the age of 14. Wow. Got O-level accounts 16. So I think, I suppose I'd say that the probable answer to the question is actually probably it was a goal from a very early age.
But Paul, knowing your history as I do, knowing your background, quite a lot of your peers now, we've talked about it on previous shows, they're actually senior partners or they're actually working for firms, but you actually set up your own firm, so, did you always have the aspiration that you were going to set up your own firm of accountancy, or did that just happen and you ended up, having to set your own firm up?
Yeah, it's a very good question, that. And I know that there will be people on this call who will understand this because I have mentioned this before. I personally felt like my whole life has been a test.
Okay.
Like I keep being tested all the time. So the absolute truth is, and this is not me being trying to be clever or something, it's true. When I worked for Ernst & Young, for instance, and I was based in Exeter, I used to get headhunted by other offices. Probably the biggest job I used to run for another office was Willis Faber, who were the biggest marine reinsurance company in the world. So you're talking about billions of turnover. And I remember, and I had a team of about 15 people working for me in Ipswich. And I remember when I told the team at the time that I was leaving Ernst & Young, and this was to go to a top 20 firm, by the way, so it wasn't like I was going to a very small firm. The general view was that they were astonished because they saw me as the ultimate Ernst & Young person.
Wow.
So I think that if fate hadn't taken a hand or whatever, the guiding force that is not understood hadn't been involved, I think I would have been a very senior partner in a very large firm because I'm good enough to be one.
Yeah,
I think what's happened throughout my life, when I was going about being tested, is I have on a number of occasions, probably at least 4 times in my life, had situations where I've actually been forced to do something that I wouldn't have done. So someone's forced that change on me.
Yeah.
So if that hadn't happened to me in the months leading up to Aspen Waite being formed, Aspen Waite would never have come into being. what's quite interesting though, and I know you know this because I've told you before, having started Aspen Waite in August 1993, it wasn't that long afterwards that a top 10 firm asked me to join them as a partner and take over Aspen Waite. And as you know, I turned it down and told them I was basically unmanageable. And so I must have gone from, I must have changed my view quite quickly, I guess. I think it was quite interesting. I remember quite soon after forming Aspen Waite, looking at my bank statement, and obviously I was doing things completely differently. And then, so for instance, when I first took over Rubis House as the business property, and it was all so effortless, and I sort of sat there wondering why I'd never done it before,
Yeah.
And
Paul, for me, I mean, I know we've talked before. I mean, when you set up Aspen Waite, you didn't take any salary, you didn't take any dividends for quite a period of time. There was some great sacrifices that you had to make in the whole process of that, the start of your entrepreneurial journey. Just tell us what was day one like for Aspen Waite, the newly formed Aspen Waite. You come into the office. What was day one like?
Pretty hairy, really. I started off Aspen Waite in a competitive situation, because the firm that I had left, we basically agreed that there were, of my clients, that I could keep certain clients, some I couldn't keep, and some we would fight over.
Yes.
So the first couple of days were mostly me trying to save client B.
Okay.
And it was really nice, because I remember one company in particular that would have been my largest client at the time, that was turning over about £8 million, and it was on the Dorset Hampshire border. And the senior partner of the firm phoned up the financial director and basically said, "You don't want to be with that idiot Waite, because he's on his own," sort of thing. And she said, "Paul's far too good to be on his own for very long. So we're staying with him." So I remember that, which was rather nice. So yeah, that's the honest. It was actually quite surreal, I think, but a battle, like a battle for your life. I'd say is probably the best way of describing it.
And Paul, what would you say to anybody that's on the call today that may be working for somebody, or they maybe have this aspiration to start their own business? What would you say to, or somebody's going to listen to the recording or the podcast? What would you say to them that they've got this aspiration like you had to start up their own firm or to start their own business? What advice would you give them?
What if someone's looking to set up their own business?
Their own business, or they're looking to branch out and really start to become an entrepreneur?
Well, I think there's at least two questions there. So let's focus on the one about what people should do if they're looking to set their own business. I think firstly, I think you need to be really honest with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, have I got the personality and the mindset to actually run my own business? So I, for instance, I would probably do some work between 7:30 in the morning to maybe 10 o'clock at night. Now, I'm not claiming that I'm working the whole time from there, but I probably get 30 emails by 9 o'clock. I would probably get another 20 after 6 o'clock. So I think you've got to have that, I suppose, love, actually. Most of the time I enjoy greatly what I'm doing, so you've got to have that. But I think the single most important thing comes back to the planning word.
Yeah.
So it's, I can set up my own business. Am I fit for purpose? Do I have a product people want to buy or a service? All that stuff, getting your budgets done, making sure that you understand pricing and you understand your competitors and all that. So I think meticulous planning and a real soul search.
And Paul, it's very one thing to have a lifestyle business. It's quite a different thing to have what you've got now, and where a legacy business. Talk to us about the difference between the two. And did you actually know when you were set out to win Aspen Waite that you were going to have a legacy business?
Yeah, I mean, to me, a lifestyle business is I've never had a lifestyle business. I think a lifestyle business is one where someone's doing a business sort of inside them, they're almost like doing it at a jog. They could do more, but they choose not to. They found something, that makes enough money for them to do what they're doing. So I think, I don't know, the legacy thing's quite interesting. I do recall, and obviously it's a long time ago, I do recall when I set up Aspen Waite that I used to say to people, I'm going to be as good as Ernst & Young, but in a town.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be like an Ernst & Young person, but accessible to people. So I guess to some extent, that's the shoots of legacy. I think, I don't know, it's very hard to say at what point in the 28 years I could definitely say I was building a legacy. I would say for as long as I can remember now, not people like my coach, or when I've been psychometrically tested, people always say to me, you are legacy driven, not value driven. That's right, value and legacy driven, not driven by profit or sort of greed. So yeah.
And Paul, when you actually look at uni, you're hugely successful. And what keeps motivating you? I mean, most people would say, right, I've achieved this, I'm in the top 100. What keeps motivating you? What's still your motivational drive?
And that's quite a hard question to answer. Probably the best way to answer it is I just can't, as a person, the way I'm wired, I don't want to die and not understand what I could have done.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's sort of a case of going on a journey and, oh, look, I can run 100 meters. I wonder if I can run 200 meters, you know what I mean? And then, I can run 200 meters. Maybe I can run 300 meters, and maybe I can run 400 meters. So I think now it's a case of, obviously we're doing something quite different. We're heavy market disruptors. I've got, of course, I've been very fortunate at quite a late stage in my career when some people would have retired.
Yeah.
I've obviously got into media and marketing big time, and I'm very, very, very excited about the possibilities for our marketing team and also the radio going forward. And I just think I'm not the sort of person who could sit there and go, oh, right, I've built my business up to a point. I could get £2 million, let's sell it.
Yeah.
I just want to see, at the moment, if you said to me what my wish is for Aspen Waite to continue after my death, being run by people like me who care about people and continue to add new services and respond to new technology, etc. And that's, and I just, it's like, why, so mate, you're a tennis player, you get to be 50 of the world, why not then become 48th? Why not? So I'm like that, I got to 50, let's get to 48, let's get to 43, let's go to 41, So
Paul, I know that you are a political man, and you have wrote some very I won't say very controversial papers, but you have wrote The Betrayal of Business. What advice would you give to Boris Johnson over this weekend?
Get a haircut.
Okay.
I would like to say anything, right? Because he's, I'm not a fan. So I do. Funny enough, we were talking about this in the recording studio yesterday. I do wonder what is going on inside a man's head, where he basically thinks it's okay as the Prime Minister to have a cowpat piece of hair shoved on his head. And make no effort whatsoever to comb it or have a discernible style, I think that in itself tells you a lot about him. I think to me, that tells me he's arrogant and, he doesn't need to care because I'm Boris, I think one of the things which there was a time where I actually thought he could have been something. The reason, and I think, I'm not the sort of told you so type person, but you would have heard me many months ago, so you'll know that I'm telling the truth here, is I often talk about Margaret Thatcher's brilliant comment that if you drive down the middle of the road, you hit cars coming both ways, and if you drive down the right-hand side of the road, obviously you only hit cars on your side. So, from my point of view, I always pride myself on telling the truth. no matter how bad it makes me look. And probably, I would think 25% of people would hate my opinions. But against that, a very large number of people would love my opinions. So I would rather have an opinion and have, a section of people appreciate me than try to appeal to everyone. So I think what Boris has actually done, he doesn't believe in anything.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in anything other than trying to win the next election. So everything he does is based around trying to appeal to enough people to win the next election. He doesn't believe in anything. So there is nothing. And I think, so what comes over, when you consider that Keir Starmer himself is a very poor, in my opinion, a very poor leader. I don't know if you saw the session where Starmer was basically asking him if he was going to resign. And I mean, it was embarrassing, and of course, Starmer is a barrister or whatever. So he Boris just basically said, well, did you broke the rules? Well, no, I thought I was in a work party. Come on now. So I don't think there's. I mean, if the man had any honour, which he doesn't, he would at least have offered his resignation a week ago, and he hasn't. So clearly, they're either hoping somehow or other this woman's inquiry won't sort of find him guilty, although I can't see how it won't, or that somehow or other the dust will settle enough for him to avoid 54 of his backbenchers trying to get rid of him.
I mean, being an economist at heart, Paul, are you just shocked at the way this government hasn't supported business and the kind of tax hikes and all the stuff that they've brought in?
Well, again, one of the things it's always good, when you're outspoken or you have opinions. There's a couple of cracking sessions in the House of Commons where even Labour have turned around to Tory cabinet members and said, when did you decide to become a socialist? Because the fact of it is, the cabinet as a whole has socialist policies. There's nothing wrong with that, in terms of people. I'm a socialist myself in terms of people. The difference between me and a conventional socialist would be that I believe in wealth creation and fair taxation. But this government is ostensibly as far removed from a Tory government. Tory governments are normally about, low taxes, stimulating business, that sort of thing. And now when you hear people like Sunak being interviewed, he talks about fair taxes, and there's definitely, the reason why I wrote the paper about the betrayal of business class is because I myself was a major loser. I was betrayed. I formed my business to create a capital model, and that was taken away from me in the first budget that Sunak did. So to me, and I've written to HQ of the Tory party and sent them an email saying I will never vote for them again. I don't rather like the thought of not voting for anyone, which is currently where I would be at the moment, because obviously I wouldn't vote Labour either, but I'm certainly not going to vote for this party the way it is, because it is a wolf in sheep's clothing, whatever the saying is.
Well, on a lighter note, Paul, you're a very busy man. I know you've got to go at 4:30. We've had another question come in, final question. Can you please ask Paul, if you were to wear a hat, what kind of style would the hat be?
Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? When I was younger, I actually used to wear a hat deliberately to attract ladies' attention. So I had a really nice, I don't know what you call it, like a gangster's hat,
really? Okay.
Grey one, the black thing.
Yeah.
Because I used to find that when I used to go into a bar, particularly after a rugby match, and I put my hat on, that there would always be at least 2 or 3 girls that would feel compelled to take my hat off or want to look at it. So I used to wear a hat quite a lot, actually. So that's my answer. Sorry.
There we go. And well, Paul, thank you very much for the time today. We really appreciate you joining us. Paul will be back with us in 2 weeks' time, but Paul is going to be writing on SME Today. He's got an article that's about to come out the beginning of next week. And also this podcast, it's going to be put into a podcast and people can listen, catch up. And also, Paul, tell people about the radio. People want another Paul fix. You are on Aspen Waite Radio. Tell people about your radio program and how they can listen to you.
Yeah, so I'm currently doing the weekend breakfast shows. So breakfast show starts at 8 o'clock and finishes at 11 on Saturday and Sunday, and the Saturday one tends to be more sort of Miss Wiltshire was doing a thing, so sort of jumping around, being happy, and Sunday would be more the music that Paul would pick, if you like. As you know, I don't know if you know this, so On This Week in History has currently been mothballed for a bit. So on Sunday,
you should have not said This Week in History sponsored by Great British Expos has been mothballed for a bit.
Well, no, because as you know, that I've offered you unlimited coverage on the radio. So on Sunday, I'm actually doing a completely new thing. So I'm kicking off on Sunday with all the countries in the world that England hasn't invaded.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things that might be, we probably can't do it now. So just for a bit of a final bit of knowledge, officially there are 193 countries in the world. So just before I tell you the answer, I'd like each of you, just in 10 seconds, to think about, of those 193 countries, how many of them do you think haven't technically been invaded by Great Britain? And then I'm going to make Alec tell me what he thinks, okay? Just to humiliate you and him in front of you all.
Okay.
Just to be clear of this, I just want to, because this is only fair. So let's take Colombia as an example, right? Colombia is actually technically been invaded because at the time that happened, it was part of Spain. Okay, so just to be clear, so there are countries that probably weren't actually that country at the time. Is what I mean.
Okay, well, Morris has put 6.
Oh, that's a bold one, isn't it?
I was going to say 20.
Really?
Yeah.
You think Britain's invaded 173 countries?
Well, look how big the empire was. So yeah.
I'm impressed. The answer is 22 countries we haven't invaded. 171 we have.
171, okay.
If you're just interested, I don't know if I can remember all of them, but Sweden, Andorra, Monaco, Guatemala, Sao Tome and Principe, Chad, Central African Republic, Republic of Congo. So there's the ones that come off. So Sweden, did I say Sweden?
Yeah, you did, yeah.
Yeah, I was quite surprised at that, actually. Oh, Mongolia is one. Yeah.
So 22 we haven't invaded, the rest we have.
Yeah. And the other thing that I'm doing is I've picked the top 9 countries that we've either been to war with or against. And it's quite surprising, actually. This wouldn't surprise you. We have actually fought in 38 recorded engagements, either with or against France.
Wow.
And the next country after that is 15. So that tells you a lot about the British-French relationship over the last 1,000 years. Right. But what surprised me is of the 38 engagements, 18 were on the same side.
Really?
18 on the same side of the French, 20 against. But the thing that's also quite interesting is the countries where we've never ever fought against Portugal or Greece.
Okay.
So Portugal is 9-0 and Greece is 6-0, just out of interest.
Oh, your mind is just a wealth of information and knowledge, and
I'll charge you for it later.
Thank you very much for your time, Paul. We know you're very busy, and again, also I'd really recommend people to go onto YouTube. Paul's has got loads of different videos where he's interviewed renowned entrepreneurs and business leaders, and really exploring their entrepreneurial journey. I get a lot of insights from those interviews. So you can go onto YouTube, Aspen Waite Radio. You can get all the archive of all of Paul's interviews, and he'll be back here in 2 weeks' time, and the article will be out next week on SME Today. Thank you for your time, Paul. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.